I've been reading books about magic of the serious kind, not the rabbit kind of magic, since I was a little boy.
The whole reason I got into film, I've told this story a million times, but I was working on a painting of a garden at night, and the plants in the dark night painting began to move, and I heard a wind. And I thought, this is interesting.
Welcome to Ritual, Light, and Sound, a podcast about occultism and esoterica in film. In this episode, we are discussing The Craft. What's the deal with all this Wiccan, New Age, California, goth witch bullshit? Was this film a rallying call to true practitioners funded by Hollywood money? Is any of what we're seeing here from real sources? And is there actual power in group ritual? The answer to this is yes. Is this shit based on real-life witchcraft or just a bunch of 90s Hollywood garbage? Let's get into all this. But first, let's bring a guest on to talk about the film.
Hey, what's up, you guys?
Hey, what's up, you guys? I have here with me Angela, who you may recognize from the first episode of Ritual, Light, and Sound's game show, The Most Dangerous Film, in which she challenged me Midsummer versus Hereditary, and I won.
Yeah, I lost because I didn't take notes, but I took notes today. Hey, you guys, how are ya?
So we are here to talk about The Craft, which is one of Angela's favorite films. So let's start off with your overall impressions of The Craft. I don't think I have to ask you whether you like it or not. I'm pretty sure you like it, right?
I love it. I love it.
You love it. When did you first see The Craft? In 96, roughly?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's been with me for a very long time. I still have my copy on VHS.
Yes, you do. Which
well,
we should watch it after this.
Definitely. It's not my original copy because, of course, that was like a mixed VHS.
Oh, a bootleg? You bootlegged it off the TV? Nice.
Yeah, that's how we did it.
Yeah. Was it from a movie channel or from, was it cut for commercials and edited?
It was not cut.
Okay,
it was
cool.
not cut.
Very cool.
It was good to go.
All right. So what stands out for you about The Craft? And this can be stuff involved in the filmmaking process of The Craft. It can be plot points, casting, actors, anything about the movie that stands out for you big time.
I feel like it was very authentic.
Mm-hmm.
It was very true to the craft. Ha ha. As in paganism and Wiccan. I love the magic shop. That stands out a lot. That's like my dream place to be forever and just be her, embody the woman running it.
Right. Man, I wonder if the magic shop in The Craft is the first. No, surely I've seen stuff like that before, right? Like right off the top of my head, there's a magic shop in The Golden Child, I think. But as far as like a real down-to-earth actual representation of a magic shop you're actually going to find somewhere, I think The Craft might be the first time I ever saw that.
Right on. Growing up with my mom, it was like, I don't know, it was very relatable because she had all the crystals and the pinnacle tarot card cloth and all our tarot cards, so it's just like we were just at one of her stores or something. Never having gone in one, it wasn't like anything out of the norm for me, but it was very dreamy and magical.
Right on. Okay, so other than the magic shop, and the feel of high school in the 90s, anything else stand out for you big time?
I love, what's her name, Feruza? Is that how you say her name? Feruza?
I guess. I've just always called her Feruza.
She is just so enticing and enthralled in this character. It's like you feel like she is Nancy.
Yeah. I read that she is a Ren Fair kid. She grew up to Ren Fair parents and grew up in the Ren Fair. So
that is so cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can totally see that having you said that.
Right, yeah, that might be what her name is all about.
Right.
It's basically a D&D name.
Feruza.
Firuza, who knows?
She's the best.
Yeah, she is. She's such a unique actor.
Yeah, and before The Craft, there was The Worst Witch, which she also starred in, and that is probably my all-time favorite movie of all fucking time. I'm all about the witches. So.
Damn it. We should have, done a double ep. We should have covered The Worst Witch
shit.
/ The Craft.
It's not too late.
Yeah. We'll come back to it. We'll do a Worst Witch a bonus episode. Oh, yeah. So Fairuza Balk's been playing young witches since the beginning of her career, I suppose.
And she created me, a young witch myself.
Right. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. So I just want to toss out the things that stand out for me while we're on this question. For me, if before rewatching it for this episode, I would probably have said just exactly what you said about what stands out for me. You know, the 90s feel, the magic shop, just how grounded it is in the witchiness. But then rewatching it, what really grabbed me was how, femme power badass this fucking movie is. These chicks just smoke cigarettes and flip birds and give no fucks the whole movie. It's fucking awesome. And it's not some ham-fisted, shitty modern attempt at femme power and showing you independence. These chicks just are who they are and don't give a fuck, and they have no agenda other than we just want to be free and independent and do what we want.
And that's what it's about. That's what The Craft is about. It's being the best version of you, being content with yourself and not giving a fuck what anybody else says.
Right, yeah. And that badass lady part of it is super strong and really, really well done. And then I would also just say the truth in the representation that you're seeing. It is super grounded, to go from when I was a kid and saw it, I felt like most of what I was seeing was pretty realistic, but I, certainly had never cracked any real witchcraft books in 1996. But I haven't done some reading, spent some years in it now, and you look at it and you're like, all this stuff is super grounded. It's very realistic, other than when it comes to them levitating and shit like that. But we'll get into that later. And then the other thing, again, which you also mentioned, that stands out for me is the casting. I think every one of the girls is so well cast, but in particular, Fairuza Balk.
Oh yeah,
she's something special. Did you find The Craft effectively frightening or scary?
Yes.
As a horror film, because I call it a horror film. I classify it a horror film.
I do, but it's mainly because of the social situations. Like the hatefulness at the end with Nancy towards Sarah, and just the hierarchy at school with the jocks and the witches, and just
okay. I think you mentioned this when we were watching it one of those 2 times, that the idea of your friends turning on you.
Yeah, for sure.
But
as in Nancy coming for me, I'm not really scared because I feel like I can take her.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't have put myself in that situation for her to come at me.
I agree. Well, yeah, to a lesser extent. I see that social fear and anxiety that you're talking about. I don't think I personally don't connect with that too much because I never much worried about being picked on or ostracized. But for me, what's scary about it is, especially in the beginning of the movie when they're just introducing Sarah to the craft and trying to explain their God concept to her, and it comes off so big and mysterious, it's almost kind of like Lovecraftian.
Right.
Oh shit, you guys worship a god with a name? And you're trying to invoke it and shit? This seems dangerous.
Yeah, I can
not
see
100%
that.
safe. And then, the dream sequence when the girls come after Sarah in her dream is pretty damn scary. Just classically scary.
Yeah, when I was younger, that shit it did enter me, but now I'm not gonna say it scares me. And even then, it was just like visually, like, oh, that would creep me out if a whole bunch of cockroaches came crawling up my leg and shit. Like I wouldn't like it.
Oh right,
but,
yeah. See, and I forget about all the icky bug stuff and snake stuff. Yeah, I just mean
rats.
when they're like
I'm pretty sure
all
rats.
witchy floating in her room and stuff. But yeah, all of that, like all the illusions that they attack her with, are pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely an effectively scary piece for me as well. Fairuza Balk, I think, just in general, is kind of threatening.
Yeah.
And can be scary. She's got a lot of teeth. She just has that look, she's got the crazy eye.
But I like hers. I really do. Something about her is like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Absolutely. There's like a sharp intelligence there. It's not just the pure crazy eye. It's like she could switch it on and off, and that's what's scarier about it. Okay, so next question on my list is, which is gonna sound like pretty silly and rhetoric, but did you dig the witchy stuff? Do you dig the occult angle in the craft? Obviously.
Absolutely, I did.
Yeah, you mentioned this sort of began your path towards true occultism and witchcraft, is that right?
I don't know if it would have it just continued it. Because, like I said, I grew up, like, my first witch movie was The Worst Witch. Mm-hmm. So that kind of, like, opened it up to, like, oh. But yeah, this definitely continued it and got me more curious. And then growing up with my mom, it just solidified that it was actually a thing. And that it actually did work and was something to be respected.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So from seeing just the, like, new agey stuff that your mom was into, seeing it represented big time in a Hollywood flick is like, oh, right, it's not just something that your kooky mom is into. Like, this is worldwide and this is believed in and respected. Did you, at the time, well, again, this is going to seem like another silly rhetorical question, but so that would lead me to believe that you immediately consider all of this stuff to be real or possibly real and grounded in real concepts and practices.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
And, like, witchcraft is, like, all in your head anyway, so even, like, the girls levitating would make sense because Nancy was, like, having an illusion of that. Because they, like, projected that onto her so she would see that. So it's like, it all makes sense.
I gotcha, yeah. Well, how about this? So, you already were familiar with some of these concepts. Our neighbors are tripping outside if you hear that on mic.
About to go straight Nancy on their ass.
So these concepts were not alien to you. Witchcraft was in your consciousness. Had you seen witchcraft represented in any dark or scary way before this? Was this the first time you saw it represented in like a horror way? I mean, obviously, to a certain extent, we all grow up with like the Wizard of Oz and evil, scary witches.
Right. The Witches was probably
the HBO one.
Yeah, I think that was before this, so that was probably the first one. And that shit's good.
Okay, right. So you see the concept of witchcraft being used for negative means,
good and bad.
Okay, was not new to you.
No.
Okay. Did anything about the craft not work for you? And consider this carefully, especially upon rewatch. Is there anything that stood out to you as like, oh yeah, I didn't quite remember that annoying part, or?
I mean, everything jives, as in it all works for the movie. What I don't like is freaking Chris Hooker being all rapey. I don't care for that much.
Is that Skeet Ulrich's character?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, what do you expect when you put a love spell on somebody? Like, I knew that was going to happen before she even did it, so. And then Laura being a racist, that was uncalled for.
Uncalled for?
It's totally uncalled for. And it's, like, not even warranted. Rochelle, like, did nothing to her, or it's whatever.
Well, I mean, racism is never warranted, but...
Right. But that's the only things that don't work for me. Everything else jives just fine, I think.
Well, it gives drama to Rochelle's character. You know, is it Rochelle or Rochelle?
Rochelle.
I think it's Rochelle.
Excuse me, it's Rochelle.
And I had read that, she wasn't written as a black character, and when they cast a black actor, then they toss the racism angle in there, to give her some more drama, which it works perfectly. It's like, if any kind of bullying can drive somebody to vengeance, obviously, but racism, especially in school, is a different kind of bullying that, I see you snap into a vengeance point quicker.
Right. It's deeper.
Yeah, that really hurts.
Especially because it's not stemming from anything. You just hate them because of their color. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's absolute bullshit, and I could see how that could throw a switch in your mind where you could say, well, this person is total trash and deserves any amount of wild-ass magic retribution I can toss on them. I wouldn't feel bad about anything that happened to this person because they're a piece of shit.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't either, to be honest. But I guess the lack of discipline in the Catholic school was a little weak. That wasn't very noticeable. Like, the teachers didn't really have a say in anything.
Yeah, they didn't do it like that kind of Catholic school.
It was very lax.
Super loose. Yeah.
Super lax.
It was like co-ed.
There's a football team. Like, what the fuck? What Catholic school has football?
It seemed like just a normal ass high school plus uniforms and a chapel.
Which I dug. I like the aesthetic.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Nuns had none authority.
Were there nuns?
Yeah, teaching that class. Am I not? No, maybe?
Nah, maybe you're right.
I don't remember. It seems like there was. I mean, they're in fucking Catholic school uniforms.
I don't think there were nuns. I know that there were teachers who weren't nuns, because there's the French guy,
okay, it was a French teacher.
And then the chemistry guy or whatever. I don't think there were nuns. For me personally, upon the rewatch, there's one weird edit which stood out to me, and I pointed it out to you the second time we rewatched, which is like when Rochelle gets her vengeance on Melody from Hey Dude, and makes Melody go all bald, and it's like she jumps in the pool, and she comes out of the pool, takes her swim cap off, and her hair's falling out, and she freaks out, and then we cut away and move on to some other pieces of story. And then days later, we get another scene with Rochelle at school, and she walks into the shower, and Melody's sitting on the floor.
Well, she's like, it's still coming out.
But then her friends come around the corner immediately and are like, oh God, what happened? Like, to me, it's pretty obviously it was meant to happen on the same day that her hair first started falling out, but they just for some reason moved this scene around in the movie. But days later, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense chronologically. That's a little nerdy nitpick bullshit thing. But the real thing for me is it just feels a little bit long.
You think?
Yeah, it's like an hour and 42 minutes. And I think just maybe a 10 or 12 minute shave would have made it fly like a fucking bullet. It would have been tighter.
Well, that's just like magic. It's like it takes a while to get the end product. You gotta wait it out.
Good. Yeah, no, good point. And the pacing does serve to build these characters. You really get to see these girls become friends and get to know each other and ease further and further into this magic practice until things get a little crazy and get a little out of control. And it's not... It doesn't seem so like quick overnight Hollywood 3-act structure. It comes off more like a novel or something. And that does work in its favor. Maybe I'm just too old and too baked. I don't know. But longer movies do start to wear on me unless they just fucking have my attention every single second. Yeah, so if anything for me, I just feel like it's a little long. It could tighten up just a little bit. The wild-ass action set-piece closing scene doesn't have to be that long. Sarah and Nancy witch fight, like, all over that huge house.
That's great, man.
Like, fucking Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, it was a little long, it was epic.
Yeah, it is. It's
the ultimate
epic.
Good versus evil. Who the fuck's gonna win?
Yeah. So 90s that it all comes down to a big set-piece action scene.
Yeah, it was like a big pow and then like nothing. It was like, and then it was done.
Right, yeah. And then the epilogue scene, which is also super duper 90s. The movie's over, but here's a little wrap up right before the credits.
Which I dug.
Yeah.
And the branch falling is like, ha.
Yeah. Do you think that each of the girls deserved what they got in the end? Do you think we'll start off with Bonnie and Rochelle? Did they deserve to just lose their powers and go back to being normal girls with no witch powers?
Well, yeah, I mean, they didn't really lose anything because they never really had their full powers to begin with. And plus, fucking Bonnie got hot, so what is she complaining for?
But aren't we to believe that, like, her scars come back and stay back?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
Now, the effects of the spells are still in effect because... What's-her-face? Rochelle's got her revenge. Like, that's still happening. She's still balding.
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie got rid of her scars. Fucking Nancy's in the crazy house because she thinks she's every fucking thing. She's lost her shit.
Interesting
And
take. I look at it as like they lost all of that. But yeah, I guess...
Skeet died, so he's not bothering Sarah anymore.
He died? Oh yeah, he went out the fucking window.
Yeah, spoiler.
Yeah. Okay, correct. Yeah, those situations just like sorted themselves out, I guess.
Yeah, but...
Well, except for Nancy.
Well, she still thinks she's Mano.
Right, I never put that together.
Yeah.
I thought she was like, she snapped because she lost her power, but I guess she got lost in the power.
And then Bonnie and Rochelle, they never really had powers on their own. It was just being the
one-shot spells, yeah.
Third.
Okay.
The whatever direction they stood on, but Sarah's a solo witch. She's always been a solitary witch. And Nancy more or less has been too, but she invoked the wrong shit.
Yeah, wow, okay.
It's like she's always on heroin or something, or whatever.
Right. Well, I think they also were doping her up in the mental home, too. You know, I think they had her on shit, I'm sure.
I don't know, I think she was just off a rocker, that's why she was tied up.
Oh, but also, before I forget, there are some bad covers on the soundtrack that don't work for me. In particular, the fucking Smiths cover that's in there is real bad. And so, like, on the soundtrack, I noticed that it says, so-and-so cover of the Smiths from the Charmed soundtrack. So Charmed was already out?
I guess that
When
shit
the
went on
Craft
forever.
came out?
I never watched Charmed, which I kind of want to revisit it now. But I never watched it back in the day, so I don't know the timeline. I want to say it was like 95, though. Possibly, maybe.
Interesting.
I can look it up real quick.
Yeah.
Let me get my witch brick.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that Charmed uses the Smiths song, but, you know, maybe I'm wrong about that. But yeah, there's some bad covers in there that also bothered me, too. But those are little things.
Oh no, Charmed came out after. It was 98. Craft 96, Charmed 98. I'm not sure what's going on.
That's really weird that it's on the cover of the Craft soundtrack that it says something about the Charmed theme song. Interesting. Oh, you know what? It's the
like
Spotify
reprised.
version. Yeah.
All this is
so,
gonna be
like,
clipped out, so whatever.
it ended up, that cover that they used in the Craft ended up being the theme song of Charmed, I guess. Alright, so...
Well, at least that awful cover got something.
Yes. So let's rate this bad boy. Here on Ritual Light and Sound, we rate films on a 1 to 10 skull rating. That is 1 to 10 skulls. How many skulls do you give The Craft, Angela?
Would you like to guess, or would you like me to just say 10?
Let me... Oh!
Because
nice.
I give it 10 skulls!
Nice, 10 skulls for The Craft. Nothing taken away from the top-notch quality of The Craft for you.
Nope, it's a part of me. It made me somewhat of who I am today.
Excellent. I can see that. I can see that for sure. And I'm glad that it did. I am going with 8 skulls on The Craft.
Oh, boo!
Well, I will let you know that that's the highest rating that anything has gotten on Ritual Light and Sound yet, so...
So, what happened to the other 2 skulls?
The other 2 skulls, like I said, I feel like it's just a little bit too long.
So you're going to take away a whole skull for that.
A little bit long. And the covers are really bad. It's music is really bad at points.
Oh, Lord and Lady.
Yeah. Those two points for me lost a skull each. But I give it 8 skulls. So thank you very much for joining me here on Ritual Light and Sound in our home. Angela.
Thanks for having me. I'll be here
All
till
week.
we move out. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Tired of Blockbuster Video charging you $1 per tape just cause you forgot to rewind it? Well, they say be kind, rewind, and that's me, Johnny Kind. You find it, I'll rewind it. Come on down to Johnny Kind's, located conveniently right next door to the Blockbuster in Sayreville, New Jersey. For the low, low price of only $2 per tape, I'll rewind it for you. And for just an extra 50 cents per tape, I'll even run it over right next door to the Blockbuster, return it for you. Cause I'm a kind guy. Johnny Kind, that's me. You find it, I'll rewind it.
So what are the occult concepts represented in The Craft? The Craft is a Hollywood-funded commercial for witchcraft, or Wicca, and how to be a badass woman who ain't afraid of authoritarian bullshit. This is a film about young women realizing their potential and asserting dominance over their surroundings using magical means. A film about young women finding a religion that resonates with them, that has power and commands reverence. And yes, definitively, witchcraft is a religion. Religion is an attempt at communication or understanding of God, or something higher. It's not a dirty word. So what we have here is a hip 90s flick about witchcraft, about witches. And in it we see a fair bit of witchcraft in action. Specific practices such as calling the quarters, coven initiation, spell work, astral travel, and glamour. But before we get into these practices individually, let's have a talk about witchcraft itself. What is witchcraft exactly? Well, witchcraft is the oldest religion on planet Earth. Shamanism, witchcraft, magic, and religion have only recently become separated by semantics of language. These things were once all the same, and are all ways of processing and understanding the world through spiritual concepts. Here's an attempt at a timeless example. The hunter and the witch are traveling together down a familiar game trail. The hunter finds the skull of a prey animal in the tall grass next to the trail and says, "This skull is picked clean by ants. It's been here for a few days," and keeps walking. The witch stops and considers the position of the skull in relation to the points of the compass. She makes notes in her journal and references other such notes about other skulls found. She draws correlations between seemingly unconnected bits of information. She whispers to the skull, "Good journey, small creature. See you on the other side," and continues walking with the hunter. That's witchcraft. Traditionally, witchcraft was not necessarily a masculine or feminine art. In the 21st century, however, witchcraft, and certainly Wicca, are thought of as a feminine movement of shamanism, or what some call a goddess religion. Certainly within the context of the film The Craft, we are approaching things from a modern Wiccan perspective. So what's with this word Wicca? Where's that come from? It comes from an Old English word, Wicca, which meant wise or wisdom. It was adopted for use by modern practitioners of witchcraft sometime in the 20th century and now represents a semi-formalized modern goddess religion. Definitively, goddess religion means a religion that venerates a deity of duality, both masculine and feminine. But for me personally, it also refers to religions that venerate strictly feminine deities as well. In Wicca, there is emphasis on both the masculine and feminine as deities, or as two parts of the same deity. And there's your Wicca primer. We see quite a few different specific Wiccan practices represented in the film The Craft, as I mentioned earlier. We've got calling the quarters, coven initiation, spell work, astral travel, and glamour. So let's break those down for a second. Calling the quarters is sort of the basic house cleaning ritual of Wiccans. It's similar to the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram in traditional Western occultism. This ritual sort of announces to the spirit world that you are here, you know what you are doing, reasonably, and you command power, essentially clearing the space of bad vibes or harmful spirits. We see the girls call the quarters at least once, maybe more, in The Craft. Coven initiation. The girls of the craft perform their Coven Initiation rite using some time-honored traditions, such as the oath at knife point and the communal sharing of blood. Spell work. Spells are rituals performed in order to achieve a certain effect on reality. Burn the candle, fall in love. Give blood, gain money. That sort of thing. We'll get into the specifics of the girls' spell work in just a bit. Astral travel is an out-of-body experience, a means of traveling and experiencing the world and dreams independent of one's body. I'm pretty sure that this is how Nancy, Rochelle, and Bonnie attacked Sarah in her dream. Glamour traditionally just meant magic, but somewhere along the line this word glamour came to represent the art of using magic to disguise or conceal oneself, particularly in a favorable or charming way. This is the nifty disguise trick we see the girls use in the film. With this stuff in mind, let's dig through my notes made after a few recent rewatchings of The Craft. This is me making note of everything that I recognized as elements of true witchcraft in the film The Craft. There was actually quite a lot to take note of, and I guarantee that if I watched it another 5 times, I would have noticed more and more. But I didn't. So here we go. The film opens directly on a group ritual being performed. The camera draws in with a sense of energy being gathered as we move forward, closer and closer to the girls' magic table. On the table we see some sage, crystals, candles, bottles of oil, and a black idol of some sort that we never get a great look at. The camera positions itself in a direct overhead shot above the magic table, and the camera is spinning clockwise, or what's known in occult terms as diocil. This is the direction one uses for banishings and clearings and such. Pretty much anything except for a summoning of demons. The next thing I made note of was the film title logo itself. The font was obviously designed to have the grimoire aesthetic, and for those of you not familiar with the word grimoire, it just means magic book or tome. Not only does the font scream grimoire, but the big A centered in the logo looks like the grand arched entrance to a holy place. Then you've got the curved blade of the R cutting just underneath the big letter A. Is this the athame, the ritual knife of witchcraft, poised at the entrance to the chapel? Is it a serpent guarding the entrance to the chapel? I don't know, but it's damn cool and interesting, and I guarantee some serious thought went into this logo design. Early on in the film, there's a scene that takes place in the courtyard of the high school, in which Robin Tunney as Sarah and good old Skeet Ulrich are having a conversation. This is the scene where Skeet tells Sarah that the other 3 girls are witches and blah 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 blah. This scene is dubbed, probably not a premeditated choice, probably just a necessity of sound design in post. But the dubbing, the dialogue, and the outside setting all remind me of a scene from Suspiria, in which Udo Kier explains witches and witchcraft to Jessica Harper. Coincidence? Maybe. Am I obsessed with Suspiria? Yes. Next up, we have the weird hobo with the snake that harasses Sarah at her new house. To me, this guy reeks of the hermit from Tarot. I actually think there's enough tarot symbolism in the craft to warrant an entire viewing to make note only of the tarot themes, but this didn't occur to me until looking back through my notes, and I didn't have time to get a third viewing in. It's possible that there's some significance to the fact that Sarah kills the hermit, sort of a kill your masters to become the master thing. There's a scene where the witches are watching football practice from the other side of a fence covered in vines. I think it's an important style choice to have the girls separated from the football practice by this barrier of nature, these vines. If you pay attention, you'll see a lot of these shots in the film where the girls are separated from the city surroundings by a flower bed or a strip of grass bordering a walkway, hedges, etc. To me, these seem like visual indicators of the nature of the witch to be removed from society, to belong in the wilderness. Which brings me to my next note. We get a lot of goth punk, crumbling cityscape meets wilderness kind of stuff in this film. Urban reclamation, as some call it. Every time the girls have a magically significant moment, it's somewhere out on the crumbling edge of the city, where hollowed out warehouses meet green fields and trees, or out in the forest, or on the beach, somewhere removed from the hustle of the true city. I don't think I really have to explain to you that more magic and weirdness goes on in areas like this than in the city, typically. We are all aware of the majesty of nature, I'm sure. At the magic shop, where the girls steal a lot of their supplies, we see a mysterious back room, guarded by a curtain with the sign of the evil eye on it. This is an ancient warding sign for witches all over the world. This lets us know that something interesting is behind that curtain indeed. And back to the aesthetic choices we see being made in this film. All the classroom and school stuff is shot very stark and bland, framed kind of stale and lit with hideous fluorescent lighting. Anything magical is shot with dynamic angles, energetic motion, and rich, saturated colors and light. I made note of the fact that the initiation ritual that the girls performed was very stripped down, just sunlight and nature. This scene comes off really grounded and positive. The Coven then performs their first official ritual together, which is sort of an affirmation thing, but also a spell by each witch. Each one of the witches' spells covers one of the classic angles of spell work: power, healing, revenge, and love. Nancy wants power, Rochelle wants revenge, Bonnie wants healing, Sarah wants love. Their big group spell concludes with a whole bunch of butterflies swarming the witches, and they interpret that as a good sign. I really like this scene because magic is so often like this. These natural occurrences with really wild timing that can easily be dismissed as nothing out of the ordinary, but can also be interpreted as having deeper meaning to those who are aware and who know how to look. That's a wrap on my notes. Let's get into the accuracy of the occult representation in the craft. The accuracy in occult representation in the craft is perhaps the best I've ever seen. Sure, some goofy Hollywood stuff gets in there, like the levitating witches and the way that the glamour works, but these are still ideas founded in true witchcraft. Maybe you've heard the term flying herbs before and are also familiar with accounts of witches flying. These are more references to astral travel and the way that the mind can fly while on psychoactive substances, more than references to actual physical flight. That said, we never really see witches flying from any point of view other than our main character Sarah, who is obviously being influenced and affected by the other witches' magical attacks. It could easily be argued that this point of view stands as an unreliable narrator, and that what we see through Sarah's eyes is not necessarily what is actually happening. So, flight aside, nearly every single thing you see in the craft is representative of true witchcraft. And who wrote this wonderfully accurate script? Well, it's not so much the guy that wrote it who's responsible for the occult accuracy, it's the witch that was hired by production as a consultant. This woman, Pat Devon, was already a well-established practitioner and was hired to come in and make sure that the script was both accurate in its representation to an extent, and to make sure that it was respectful to practicing witches everywhere. This seems completely insane given that Hollywood's current operating procedure is to buy the title of a thing and then just do whatever the fuck kind of goofy shit they want with that thing. But apparently this director, Andrew Fleming, is a cool guy who wanted to present his film with both accuracy and respect for the subject. So they hired Pat Devon, who came in and made sure that the rituals and concepts were based in reality. Pat also did some work on the original script's explanation of the witch's spirituality. She let them keep the fictional deity of Manon, but made sure that the concept of goddess and god were included. She was instrumental in getting a really goofy character and plot point removed from the film entirely, which was a creepy old hag that guarded the back room at the magic shop. In a film that was doing such a good job at representing this subculture, a creepy old hag was just dead wrong. She got him to drop it entirely. Pat Devon made sure that the summoning of Manon was tweaked enough from actual summoning procedures that no kids would rush out after seeing the movie, repeat what they heard, and possibly get into some metaphysical trouble. Pat Devon is the real reason that The Craft is the respectful and accurate movie about witches that it is. Before I close this out and move on to my Hand of Glory rating for The Craft, I wanted to read a piece of an interview that Pat Devon did in March 1998, talking about the production of The Craft. Here we go. So this is a piece from towards the end of this interview, and I just thought it was interesting for you guys to hear if you've never read this interview before, because it sort of gives you some insight on the actors in the film itself and what was going on a personal level behind the scenes when it comes to witchcraft. So the interviewer here asks Pat Devon, did any of the actors or other participants get interested and want to read books on the subject of witchcraft? So this is Pat Devon's answer. She says, Robin Tunney, who played Sarah, was the only one of the actresses who had done no research and knew nothing about the Wiccan religion. I gave her The Truth About Witchcraft Today by Scott Cunningham. Rachel True, who played Rochelle, pulled the spiral dance out of her backpack at our first meeting. Pause from the interview here. This means that Rachel True showed up on set fucking educated and ready to rock. Back to the interview. Neve Campbell, Bonnie, had done some research for the part as well. Firuza Balk had been born into a Ren Fair family and had a pagan upbringing. She had a lot of books and knew quite a bit. After the movie was completed, she bought Pan Pipes, a magical supply shop in Hollywood. Though she does not run the shop, she owns it. On the last day of shooting at the beach, one of the actresses asked me to dedicate her to the path of the goddess. We walked up the beach in the dark, away from the lights, to a cove where I dedicated her and presented her to all four quarters. For her name, she took a name that I told her I would have named my daughter, had I ever had one. So, Pat Devin doesn't say who this is, which one of the actresses this is, but I'm going to take a wild fucking guess and say that it was probably Firuza Balk. But I just thought this was a really interesting tidbit, right? Like, this shows you that behind the scenes, there was true witchcraft going on. That not only was an actual witch employed to make sure that all this stuff was accurate, but the actors themselves were becoming practitioners, becoming true witches. Cool, right? So for its accuracy and occult representation, I give The Craft 9 hands of glory. That is 9 out of 10 hands of glory. Good damn job, The Craft. Let's get into some practical application of these concepts and real-life source material. Where does one go for a true source of information on witchcraft and the Wiccan religion? Well, there isn't necessarily a go-to tome for witchcraft, as witchcraft is technically the oldest religion on planet Earth. A lot of its traditions are passed down orally, or even genetically, one might argue. Some books I used in my research for this episode are Wicca, The Complete Craft by D.J. Conway, A History of Witchcraft by Dr. Susan Greenwood, and Solitary Witch by Silver Ravenwood. I would say that if you want a great starting point that covers both the history of witchcraft and the practice itself, I would grab a copy of D.J. Conway's Wicca, The Complete Craft. This is everything you need to become a practicing witch, which is something I highly encourage. Alright, so the practice itself. Spells and rituals and affirmations. Does this stuff really work? Hell yes it does. It isn't just pareidolia and synecdoche that have kept these traditions alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The mind, when properly trained and focused, can affect reality. Given that mainstream culture has accepted things like The Secret, manifestation, affirmation, and positive thought, I'm not sure why anyone doubts the validity of occult practices anymore. We know that these things work, and if one mind can affect reality, think of what several minds in group focus might be capable of. This is why coven structure is so important to witches. But as always, don't take my word for it. Get the books, try this shit, see what happens. Now it's time for a little true life tale of witchcraft, or rather, a true life tale of the time some friends and I as kids played light as a feather, stiff as a board. My true life tales of occultism and esoterica tend to get a bit long-winded, but this one is short and sweet. We're talking roughly 1994 here, before The Craft, but the game is older than that, obviously. I can't remember where we had heard about it, but a few of us decided to give it a go one night, and after doing the chant for about a minute or so, we lifted the one kid right up like he was made out of fucking styrofoam. It blew our minds. Each of us were only using 2 fingers to lift our friend, and he just went right up like he was on wires. He didn't levitate or anything, but it was like he had no mass. He freaked out laughing and we dropped him. He was freaking out too because he had never expected us in a million years to actually be able to lift him up like that. But we did. We still occasionally talk about it, and still are unsure exactly how it was possible. And there you have it. That's my story. We're going to take a break, then I'll be back with some gematriography for that ass. Stay tuned. time for some more gematriography, y'all. In case this is your first episode of Ritual Light and Sound, this is where I practice the Kabbalist art of gematria on the title of a film. Gematria is the practice of getting a numerical value for a word in Old Hebrew, then looking for words and phrases associated with that number. The craft added up to the number 641, and I knew we were off to a good start right here. 6 plus 4 plus 1 equals 11, and 11 is the number of magic. Here's a list of the phrases and words I found associated with the number 641 and all the various numbers it can be broken down to. Dama Purpureum is the first phrase that I found, and I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but we're going to go with it. Dama Purpureum is a Hindi phrase, which as near as I can tell means purple rain cloud. This is interesting to me, not only because purple is largely considered the color of witches and witchcraft, but also because the film's opening act has a fair amount of rain in it. The word defective came up twice, which doesn't happen very often at all for me when practicing gematria. One could certainly consider the girl's coven a defective one, right? Then we have the following phrase, firebrand, fire or light of the sacred magic of light, life, and love. This is a reference to the 11, the pure number of magic itself. To conceal is another phrase that popped up, which makes me think of the glamour that the witches practice. A circularity of form or motion. Seems pretty obviously a connected phrase, right? Then we've got these two phrases, the palace and to keep silent. A lot of the craft takes place in areas of reverence, such as the chapel at the witch's school and the places in nature where they go to worship and practice their rites, which makes me think the palace. The generally secretive nature of witchcraft and the chat that Bonnie has with Sarah about keeping a magic journal that you never allow anyone else to read, both make me think of the phrase to keep silent. Here's an interesting phrase that I found. Weasels and other terrible animals. Kind of makes you think about all the creepy crawlies in this flick, right? Then there's the word Kether, which is the name of the first sephira or sphere on the Tree of Life. Kether is the first step on the path, on any path really, but certainly the path of magic. It could be argued that these witches are just beginning their path. And lastly, we have the word Agla, A-G-L-A, which is actually an acronym, not a word. And it is an acronym of 4 of the Hebrew names for God. In occult biz, Agla is sort of a big God name, an all-encompassing name. A little like how Nancy describes the witches' view of their god, Manon. That's a wrap for the craft edition of gematriography. Let's outro this mother and get out of this smoky room. In closing, The Craft is a really special film. I enjoy it both just as a good movie and for what it did for the modern magical community. I love how supremely 90s it is, how badass and cool the witches are in it. The cast is amazing, untouchable. I give it 8 skulls. I love that it managed to be the poster film for Witchcraft and was advertised to hell and back and shown in cinemas everywhere. Without a doubt, this film caused droves of people to become actual witches, and that is priceless. It represents witchcraft, and more specifically, Wicca, accurately and with respect. I give it 9 hands of glory. The Craft is the real deal. Next up on Ritual Light and Sound, Hellraiser. Let's talk about S&M and the other S&M. Sex magic, y'all. Catch you then. Thanks for listening to Ritual Light and Sound. I've been your host, Evan Dean Shelton. Check out the Lurking Transmission Presents Patreon page to find out how you can get access to every single episode of Ritual Light and Sound and not just the odd-numbered, publicly available ones. Episode 2 is about Stranger Things and the Montauk Project, and Derek Carey of Astral Radio Z and I had a fucking blast talking about that crazy shit. Until next time, remember, film is ceremonial magic, performed for you at roughly 24 sigils per second. How is it affecting you?
I think that all vital periods of the drama and of literature are periods of great violence, and that all of our great plays and novels are violent. And I don't like them when they are poor novels, or when they are not works of art. They become shoddy and seem to be pandering.
Yes, but usually
something wicked, you know.
Virtue triumphs, whereas in the horror comics it doesn't.
Doesn't it?
I don't think so.
No.
well. It doesn't in Edgar Allan Poe either, you know.
Eraserhead, David Lynch, and Fred Elms, who was the lighting cameraman in the same picture. And where are we right now?
We're down in the tanks right now.
The tanks.
Yeah. You can,
It's one of the locations.
Yeah, we shot an early scene of Henry just walking through here. We had a longer scene rigged up, and if you look down here, you can see what remains of a cat we had down here.
Was this here when you got here?
No, I brought this down here.
Oh.
This I got from a veterinarian. It had just died, and so he let me, work with it, and it wasn't like this. But when we were working with it, it went into the water there, and there's a lot of tar in there, and it got covered with tar and preserved itself. That was 5 years ago that was there.
But that never got into the film.
No, that cat's not in the film. But Henry walks right from over there through here and comes right to here. So in a sense, it's right just below the shot that's in the film is this cat.